Hi, folks. I'm Father Joe Grimaldi. You can call me Joe, and I'd like to welcome you to my podcast. But now, here's our host and friend, Ken Calvert.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Calvert, alongside Father Joe Grimaldi, and we would like to welcome you to the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast. Friends of the Father Joe podcast know that the COVID world we now live in is constantly changing. One of the great success stories to adapt, provide, and serve, well, that's our friends at Starlink, and I encourage you to start the process by simply going to www.starlincoln.com. It's right there. Check out the new vehicle inventory, and what an inventory it is. Oh, by the way, our certified pre-owned vehicles, well, they're abundant and in near perfect condition. Our award-winning service department remains by appointment only, but they're open from 8 until 6 p.m. However, we're now accepting walk-ins for new vehicle sales, and those hours are 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. I have to tell you, as a Star customer for 2 decades, I have never seen a stronger lineup of new vehicles. 248-354-4900, 248-354-4900. Star Lincoln, located right there on 12 Mile Road, just east of Telegraph, home of the Star treatment. I just realized I sounded a little like the late, great Casey Kasem. And we would like to welcome you to the Father Joe Grimaldi podcast.
But you have your own special way of doing it, so it's okay.
Father Joe's been number one now for 251 weeks. Let's read some of the mail that we get on a regular basis. That's pretty good, Ken. Now, people are going, that was terrible, Ken. Terrible, terrible. This is not terrible. This is interesting. You brought it to my attention last evening as we were speaking on the telephone. On our iPhones, as a matter of fact.
Of course.
And I mentioned that because of the fact that Apple has just released its new iPhone 12, and the world is so in love with their tech toys and whatnot. Yes, I'm going somewhere with this. You were shocked. Well, you weren't shocking. You're always shocking. You shocked me with this. I've heard nothing about this, and I don't know why. Maybe I've just missed it. Maybe not. Maybe it's still relatively new news. Blessed Carlo Acutis was an Italian Catholic computer programmer. He was best known for documenting Eucharistic miracles around the world and cataloging them onto the website that he created in the months before his death from leukemia. Now, Carlos passed away in 2006. Very young man. Looks like any teenager you would see today, bedecked in Nikes and obviously European,
exactly,
so
yeah.
He's wearing a soccer suit.
Sure.
Needless to say, I mean, this is truly first generation. I mean, this is right now. And look what he did with it, and look what he did with his time in such a short period. Incredible. What are your thoughts about somebody so young, so quickly being canonized?
Yes, I mean, beatified anyway at this point. And before I speak a little bit about the little that I know about Carlo, there's a difference between beatification and canonization.
I'm so glad you went there.
However, it's not a tremendous difference.
Okay.
Once a person is blessed, the formal use of the word blessed, he is pretty much recognized as one of the important ones in heaven. So he is already has the status of someone that, first of all, we could use his name at Mass. You know, once the church declares you as a blessed, that means that you have already had miracles that have been verified in your name. It means that you are now listed among the, and I'm going to use the word saints in heaven, even though you don't have the official title of saint. However, you're someone that the church can pray to. You're someone who acts as an example to the general public. We could put pictures of you in the various churches and homes. Now, with a fellow like Carlo, who died so young, and people say, why was his canonization such a speedy one, if you want? Well, the church is in need of, and I use the word idol, I-D-O-L with in parentheses. Mm-hmm. Every teenager has idols painted or put on his wall in his bedroom.
Of course.
And they're people that teenager looks up to and wants to imitate. Usually it's a sports figure, or it could be a music figure. However, these are the idols that they look up to. Well, here we have this ordinary person, just like you and me, as it were. This young fellow who liked to play sports, who liked soccer in particular, but who also spent a lot of time on the computer, programming, knowing what to do with it. And he also spent a lot of time programming the various miracles that occurred in the church and so on and so forth. But he was somebody who, he was like you and me in many ways, but he concentrated on a relationship with his God. And so what Francis, the Pope, would like to see, not just himself, but his advisors as well, you have here a great example for people to follow. You know, in the Catholic Church, the saints that we have serve as examples. So very often we know that there's a saint who known for his charity, for his love of animals, for his love of people who are poor and homeless. So St. Francis is somebody that lights our lights, if you want. He's somebody who says, wow, this is what I should be doing. I want to be like Francis. He's such a loving character. He loves animals. He loves nature. He loves all of these good things. Or you might have somebody like St. Dominic, who was the ultimate preacher, you know, this type of thing. So there's all of these saints that we have that give us examples to follow. Now, this young fellow, Carlo, is great for a teenager to say, wow, that's my hero, because number one, today, I think for a teenager, when you say sports and you say computers, either one or both, you will have a very good connection with that person. And top it off with Carlo seeing his interest in these things as a way of getting close to God. So what Francis wants to see is, okay, we have somebody for you. You know, we have canonized, when I say we, the church has canonized husbands and wives because they serve as models of husbands and wives in everyday world. We've, obviously, Jesus himself was a carpenter, so it brings us, you know, some dignity to the idea of work, of labor, particularly in the area of carpentry. But, you know, it's all of these things. You can almost see every distinction, every work that there is, we have a patron saint for that. And so, you know, this Carlo is certainly the example of a patron saint for teenagers.
I would say it's the one and only right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were talking about heroes as a kid, you know, I mean, so many guys had, oh gosh, Al Kaline, you know, or, you know, when you can finally get a poster. And then, of course, there were the famous Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas and Magic Johnson. People would get those cardboard stand-ups in their room. That's my guy. Oh, you'd wear his jersey, you know. Oh, man, my dad got me the Isaiah Thomas, the real jersey for Christmas. I get that. I totally get that. Second part of my thought process immediately took me to the, what has he done? What have they confirmed as miracles? I haven't had a chance to dig that deep.
I haven't either.
Okay.
But let me say this much, though. Yeah. One of the things that happens when somebody is declared blessed, they have an exhumation of his body, and they did. And he wasn't completely incorrupt, the body, but that doesn't mean anything in the church. Many saints have had the natural corruption of the body.
Sure.
So it's not, there are some that are incorrupt. But one of the things they did with him is that they put in new clothing to match what he had before, so that any holy cards or pictures of him are going to be pictures that show him as a young man, as someone who was involved with the world as a young person, as a teenager.
Yeah,
because teenagers need models. There's no question. We all need models, but teenagers in particular, because they get quizzical about God. And should I be ashamed of praying? No, not at all. Should I be ashamed of saying I love Jesus? Not at all. Because I can still play soccer, I can still play football and love Jesus. So I think this is something that we want to see the kind of work that he will do in the world.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he didn't have a couple of posters of Steve Jobs from Apple and Bill Gates from Microsoft.
I wouldn't be surprised.
You know what I mean?
That's another...
And not to mention the fact that I happened to see a story last evening on the local news. Maybe it was the national news, where these two young fellows, I think it was right here in the city of Detroit, two young guys, both have applied to Harvard, so they must be seniors, although they look much younger. What they do is they find old computers, totally refurbish those computers, and get them in perfect working order, speed them up, and give them to people that don't have computers that need computers.
Well, that's a perfect work of charity. I think that's a beautiful thing.
And and as you were saying, and I'm adding on to it, that's right in a young person's sweet spot. I said to Les Paul, the great guitar player, once, were you the kid that got a watch for Christmas and instead of wearing it, you took it apart? Because he's credited with inventing the electric guitar. And he laughed out loud and he said, yes, that was me. And I always thought that was a great expression, that somebody was the type of person to get a watch, but now wear it, take it apart to see how it works. So that's what I find amazing about these kids. And we've joked about this. There's no one on the planet that hasn't said, Bobby, get in here. What am I doing wrong? And a 6-year-old can figure out your computer better than you can.
Oh, yeah, nowadays, of course.
So I think it's brilliant. Who put forth, or do we need to study this a little more or to talk more about, Carlo? Because I'm certainly going to, this is just a great topic. It's a great...
Well, everything is so new that, to know the details, you'll have to do a lot more reading on it. Mm-hmm. It's a very new subject, obviously. He was only beatified on October 10th. But it's amazing that the beatification was done in such a short period of time. Usually, they don't even start looking at a case until 30 years after a person is dead.
Yeah, because you do canon law. You certainly know this.
Yeah, but nowadays, you see, for example, John Paul II, Mother Teresa, who was well known throughout the world.
Yeah.
She had to be moved ahead fast. And John Paul II and John the 23rd and all of these popes who have done tremendous things in a short period of time. So you have this young man. Here's an opportunity to have a model or a hero for young people. So let's work on his canonization, which they did and were successful at.
I highly recommend that you all listening to this podcast right now, when you get back to your quarters, your place, wherever you happen to lay your head down at night, go to your computer and Google Blessed Carlo Acutis, Acutis, Carlo Acutis, Italian Catholic, who was born in London, by the way.
Correct,
and went back to Italy. And I believe both of his parents are still alive, but we've got some work to do on this. But Father Joe mentioned it to me, and I wanted to get right to it. So sad of his passing from leukemia. If anybody really, you wonder why, such a wonderful young man.
Sure.
With that said, would you say a prayer for us, sir?
Sure. Breath of life and love, disturb the dark clouds of fear and anxiety that trouble our lives, and in this gentle breeze, as clouds disperse, may we sense hope and healing as your light breaks in and through our hearts and minds and shines out in the world. Amen. This is Father Joe Grimaldi, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Father Joe Podcast.
We'd like to remind you to share the Father Joe podcast with your friends. You can reach Father Joe at frjoepodcast@gmail.com, and you can find us on Facebook or say, Alexa, play the Father Joe podcast. We look forward to seeing you next time.